Hi everybody, I just thought today just do something slightly different. I'm just going to do a random bookshelf. Now, I could do this at a number of places around the house. I've got a few shelves here, a bookcase here, loads upstairs. Anyway, probably many times you've watched these videos and you've seen this row of books. So if I just do a quick pull and show what's on there. Graf Zeppelin and Hindenburg, the golden age of the great passenger airships. This really does go into incredible detail. Douglas Robinson, he's an aviation historian. His books are always excellent. I mean, for a long period I got into the Zeppelin and the history of the Zeppelin and airships, especially from the World War One and through, Nazi Germany, etc., etc., and just following the history of it. But if I had the money, my dream would be to recreate the Zeppelin. It'd be so good to see the Zeppelins in the sky again. That would be the dream. I've seen some fantastic footage and there's some amazing footage of people on Zeppelins, travelling around the world, which is what they used to do in the 30s. And it's that little golden age of flight and going abroad for the first time for a lot of people. Wonderful, evocative stuff. Just marvellous. So I've got a number of books on Zeppelins and that kind of thing. Anyway, in fact I'll show another one as one just on here. This is a very good book, The Zeppelin in Combat, again Douglas Robinson. This is all what happened in the First World War. Some nice pictures here, some really excellent history and in-depth and everything that happened during World War One. Especially the flights over the UK, the kind of damage that was done, the destruction that was wrought. A lot of it was by fear, more than anything else. I mean, once the UK had found bullets which could blow these things up and make them catch on fire, incendiary bullets, the days were numbered of fear of the Zeppelin. But it's still a fascinating, incredible fascinating period really. As I say, it was for fear mainly. A lot of our bombs were dropped nowhere. A lot of the time they made excursions over and had to fly back because of wind problems or all sorts of different issues, and so they just dropped their cargo and went, so the damage was not anywhere near as destructive as it could have been. But equally the fear probably came from the fact that these bombs were dropped randomly at times, so people, even in the small towns and whatnot, became afraid because you just never knew. It was an incredibly potent weapon, psychologically anyway. Okay. It's a book on hermits. Peter Francis, The Insight of Solitude. It's always fascinated me, the idea of people just taking themselves off and living for decades potentially alone. And this goes all the way through maybe the history of solitude, starting with China. You've got the Russian Stasi, the Desert Fathers, of course. Ornamental Hermits by Walden Pond, Henry David Thoreau, Thomas Merton, Waters of Contradiction, Charles de Foucault. They're all, it's just fabulous to think how they think, to sort of enter into their mindsets and the kind of insights and things that they might have learnt from solitude. Solitude, it has its benefits, but at the same time, sometimes, there are negatives, obviously, social aspect of things. You can learn socially and you gain wisdom from social interaction. There's a kind of, I'd say a mystery, but maybe it's not the truth to believe that it's by spending loads of time on your own you become wiser than everyone else, because it's not actually true. You can gain wisdom whether you're with thousands of people all the time, or whether you spend time alone all the time. But I think there's more to be gained from both, from a kind of happy balance. But always fascinating, that kind of thing. The Fireside Book of Death. A little bit of cheerful reading. This is just a great book. This is Hale Publishers. They did a few sort of in this kind of series. I've got a nice book, I think it's on Highwaymen, really lovely book. Anyway, Fireside Book of Death. The fear of premature burial. These are the chapters. The fear of posthumous indignity, i.e. necrophilia, vampirism, defilement of the famous. The fear of bodily disintegration, mummification, etc. The fear of being forgotten. So there's some interesting stuff written on gravestones, etc. The fear of ignominious death. Suicide, to choose how and when. A fascinating book of lots of different kind of true macabre things that people kind of go up to prevent death, being locked, like coming to life underground. One of the big fears is dying and then, oh no, my goodness, you wake up, and you're in a box 6 feet under. So all sorts of stuff in here. What can you say? It's what it is. These are just random things. You can tell these are all non-fiction. Challenge to the poles. This is always something that interests me. This is highlights of Arctic and Antarctic aviation. John Grierson. Not an easy book to find. And it does chart all sorts of early aviation, which is, again, a lot of people died doing this. They had these tiny little biplanes and they'd take off from ships and whatnot, and be flying over the Arctic, engines go out, see you later, But, the whole point was exploration. It was that period again, after Scott and Amundsen and people had done their bit. Like everything else in the world of the 20th century in particular, as Everest had to be climbed, all of these different achievements had to be reached, men had to land on the moon as technology advanced. And the first to the pole by flight, and all these different things, circumnavigating the world and all this sort of stuff became important somehow, became adventurous, and became something which is in man's spirit, if you like, became alive. We can do this, there's potential now. Whereas maybe in the past man had dreamed, like Icarus, and failed, and obviously never really had the means to do these things. But as soon as we get a new means to do something, then these ideas and these kind of fanciful notions and these new horizons open up. Excellent book, so many great characters. This is the thing with these things. It's not just about people flying around for poles, it's for characters, it's for history, it's what drove these people on, a nice big book. There's all sorts in here. Just show a few pictures. Just wonderful, wonderful, evocative stuff. And he goes through decade by decade. Mainly, up to the 50s. Great stuff though. I'll just show a couple more. Otherwise you'll be bored and be here all day. The Campaigns of Napoleon. This is the book, even with torn out maps. Still the most comprehensive book on campaigns of Napoleon. And for many years I painted model soldiers. I showed them once before, for wargamers and collectors. and I always got into the history of it more than the actual war games. They've sort of bored me a bit, but the detail about the uniforms and when these uniforms came into play and the different changes and shifts in patterns and epaulets and plumage, all sorts of stuff kind of fascinated me. Sabre-tashes on cavalry swords. But this, again, it shows the genius of the man. Whatever we may think of him, the man was a military genius, no doubt about it. And not just military, the fact is he was able to lead the whole country, and the achievements in his short life were quite remarkable, really. It's not something I've actually read for a long, long time, but it's nice to have on the shelf and dip into occasionally. A couple more. The Might That Was Assyria. Another period that always fascinated me was, early civilization, early culture. Assyria and Babylonia, etc. Babylon. Some of the greatest and most interesting periods in history, really. Sort of came really quickly, appeared in the world, hugely dominant in the Middle East, completely destroying everyone in front of them, then disappearing. Same with Babylon, just disappeared. So there's so much of this stuff is still, their, I'm not going to say legacy, but their art, if you like, and their culture has survived, through texts and through different reliefs and whatnot. And archaeology has obviously done a great deal to bring this period to life over the last 100 years or so. They're fascinating, because this shows the domestic scene. It shows not just military. When we think of these things, we tend to think of military. Well, I do. There's a natural inclination to think of these sort of warlike peoples in our minds in one way only, because there's so many different aspects of our culture. So again, another book I've looked at for a long time. I can see time's marching on, so I'll just take one more. This is a book on Highwaymen. This is the Crimson Book of Highwaymen. I do love this old style. Just nowadays books just look a bit naff. They all have that same kind of it's non-shiny but kind of feels shiny cover, I just like this kind of publication. Great book. You might look at it, well, it looks a bit sketchy. In some ways it's sketchy, but it's a really, again, it evokes an aspect of history which we think we know a little bit about when we hear famous highwaymen names, but it's, again, it brings to life some of that period, some of like why they were doing these things, what it was that drove these people to do this, and again, it's for me, it's part of bringing the history alive of the period, and these are the sort of the niche elements of history, if you like, the kind of the things here and there that make up part of the great big tapestry of what was going on in the various centuries when this sort of thing was happening, because obviously it's happened for many centuries, but the term highwaymen is more of a recent thing, I suppose, with the invention of the highway. I'm just talking crud now, but you've obviously got Dick Turpin and people in here, Claude Duval, Jack Rand, these different names, Ned Kelly. Just a very interesting, fascinating kind of read. Anyway, be all day. So that's it, and something a bit different. And thank you to the 10 of you who have got this far. See ya.